Welcome to Modern Learning on the Air. I'm your host, Jeff Brown, and in today's episode, we'll explore people-first learning in the digital age, balancing AI, tech with human-centric design and L&D. We'll discuss how AI and innovative technologies can enhance learning experience while maintaining a strong focus on human connection and engagement. Joining us today are Ian Beacraft, CEO of Signal and Cipher, and Karen Vieth, President and CEO of InSync Training. Ian is a renowned expert in AI and the future of work, helping companies prepare for the future powered by people and enabled by AI. He has led innovation projects for major brands like Nike, Samsung, and Microsoft. And as CEO, he reinvents ways of working for companies like Boston Consulting Group and Universal Pictures. And joining Ian is our very own Karen Vieth. She brings over 20 years of experience in advancing education and training countless educators as a pioneer in virtual training and development. She has created countless virtual training solutions for clients like Wagums, Mars, Altria, and Teradyne. As InSync's training CEO, she leads the company in focusing on learners' needs, client outcomes through customized training solutions, strategy learning, and development growth. Together, they bring a wealth of knowledge and insight into how we can balance cutting-edge technology with human-centric design and learning development. So let's get started. Ian, Karen, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to be here with you.
All right. Well, let's set the stage a little bit and start talking about what people first learning actually means. Can you both share some perspective on this approach?
Sure. I'll start. At InSync, we believe that people first learning is really all about prioritizing the learner's experience and ensuring that learning solutions are designed and delivered with the learner needs in mind. It's really about kind of pulling at the heartstrings and empathy, right? And understanding the learner's context. Why are they there? What's their intent? Not just what our intent is, but really about them. It's creating personalized experiences, Jeff, that engage learners at that deeper level and really help to make learners feel a part of something bigger than just a training, right? Something that's really relevant to them back on the job.
That really resonates, Karen. It acknowledges a lot of the things that Karen just spoke about. When we do change management for organizations, we're trying to help them understand what the future of their workforce looks like. We're focused on a few things, but we start with people, process, frameworks, and constraints. And you'll notice that technology is not listed there. It comes later as an enabler, but the first thing that's listed is people, because we're focused on what the people in your organization, what their needs are, where they are currently, and what they're going to need to be that team and be that group that can take your organization to what the future state looks like. So it starts with understanding where your people are at, what their needs are, and what hopefully their skill set and their composition looks like by the time they get to that desired state. So it's always starting with the people and their needs, not the technology, which is part of the challenge of what we're hearing with all the noise in the marketplace right now.
So true.
That's really interesting how you said that. So how do you think human-centric design is crucial in today's digital age?
So jumping on the human-centered design piece, it really is focusing on what their needs are and not so much the hype cycle. Almost all the stuff we're hearing in the news is technology can do this, AI can do this. And it's about putting the technology first. When I do keynotes, I talk about how we've deified this technology in some respect. We talk about ChatGPT as if it's an oracle. We ask it questions about what's the future of this industry. And we say, ChatGPT told us about financial management in 2050. Congratulations. Really, these things are trained on data that we ourselves have written and posted on the internet. So it's not creating anything net new in that respect. It is synthesizing and putting it together in different ways, but it's based on our data. So it may be coming from an AI or a machine, but the source comes from material we have produced in the past. So that's one place to start. The other is that by short-circuiting this whole AI is this incredible, omniscient, all-knowing oracle and saying it is a tool, it is a platform, it is an infrastructure, changes the dynamic of the conversation. And it focuses on how do we use that in service of our goals and in service of how we work together as teams. What does the team of the future look like? What does the company of the future look like? It's not all run by AIs and bots. I hate to burst the bubble of so many futurists today, but we're going to be relevant for a very long time. And that is the first step in getting there, is recognizing there's a lot of human intervention, but there's also a lot of change that's coming to our roles. And it's the lack of clarity around what that change looks like that's creating that fear and uncertainty. And that's where I think the center of the tension lies around human-centered design, because so much of the news cycle is devoted to the tech design and it leaves the human portion out of that news cycle.
Right. There's so much fear. I mean, so much of what you said, Ian, just resonates with me so much, because from the moment AI became the buzz, the thing, right? I remember I was actually in Cabo, and we were having a big discussion. We were at a conference and we were having a big discussion. It was actually a medical conference with my husband, and they were having a big discussion about ChatGPT. And it was just this, and I was like, guys, it's just another tool. Like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to take some of the mundane things that we already do and let that be done by a tool, and then allow us to do really, really, really cool things instead of just really cool things? I mean, some of the stuff that you talk about, we've given this tool so much power. Why? We are what's driving the tool. It learns from us. And we have to remember that as humans, right, if we focus on, speaking from learning and development, if we focus on what we know to be true, and especially as, the workforce grows as a remote workforce and a hybrid workforce, it's essential that, we create these learning experiences and we utilize these tools so that we're focused on engaging that end user, that we're creating and designing content, with maybe the aid of technology, but not focused on the technology. It's still focused on the end user and the outcomes that the organization and the learner has.
Karen, I love that statement. And I love the idea of really focusing on how we're using tools to define the work that we're going to be doing versus being defined by a tool. And I think that's kind of at the center of a lot of the friction that people are experiencing with AI right now. Is we're seeing for the first time that tools can become intelligent. And this idea that a tool might be able to do something that individuals do on a regular basis can be a cause for pause. And it's something, unless you were a rather technically adept automation engineer for the last several decades, that wasn't really possible. Right. Or we might see something like Google or another tool automate a small piece of things, like autocomplete is something we've been using for years. And now autocompletes to the level where it can actually do whole briefs, whole assignments, emails, drafts, you name it, for you. And when people see portions of their work automated, all of a sudden we're looking at this through the lens of, can I be replaced? And that's a natural first step with something that's unknown. We're kind of navigating those first, those 5 stages of grief. There's an element of, oh my gosh, this is coming for the value I provide. And right now we're very much in the denial/anger phase. But what's really happening and what we're seeing when we work with clients is we're getting them to the point of understanding that this may be automating bits and pieces of specific types of tasks. But the goal, when leveraged and harnessed properly, this gets it so that AI can do between 40 to 60% of a specific type of work, so that you can spend 100% of your energy on that other 40 to 60%, with the goal eventually having AI doing 80 to 90% of certain tasks and 100% of your energy in that 10% that makes all the difference. And that gets to your point, Karen, of like the stuff that is more reliant on the human nature, the connection, the facilitation, the orchestration, the stuff that humans are really good at, that AIs just aren't. And right now, I think all of us can relate to so much of our time being spent on administrative, on busy work, and the amount of time in our day spent really focused on work that makes a difference, deep, focused, creative work, things that only we can bring to the table, is minimized. Whereas if AI is harnessed properly, we can increase the amount of time we're spending in that zone, really bringing the best of ourselves to the work that we do. And that's my optimistic take for where this can go. But there's no guarantee we'll get there unless that is consciously where we're heading.
Well, I always equate it to, remember when the computer first came out? Do you remember how scared people were when the computer, oh my God. I mean, my mom, she was a pharmacy technician and she was used to doing her math, right? And when the computer came out, it was like, whoa, this might take my job. And so it's that same kind of concept. And we see this in cycles. And so it's not necessarily a tool that's going to take our job. It's the lack of understanding of how to implement that tool that's going to take our job, right? Because we're not going to allow it to do that 40 to 60% of the tasks that this tool now can do, because we're going to fight it, right? Something you said that I wrote down, it's time for us to do work that matters, right? Work that matters, that's greater, that allows our human brains to really dig deeper into the thinking that we're made to do. That tool isn't made to think, it's made to kind of think based on what we've provided for it. So it's just interesting to hear, and I'm so thankful to hear from an AI expert that is looking at it from this angle. It's a tool in our toolbox that we can continue to use. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a really cool tool, but it's still just a tool. It's not, technology isn't going to drive the future. We're still in the driver's seat.
I kind of wanted to jump off on that a little bit. Obviously, AI is a tool, but we still need some sort of people learning strategy that's in there. So what benefits are you seeing right now with the application of AI and face-to-face or virtual that we're doing right now in the people first learning strategies for it? So like, what kind of strategies are you adapting to in that field?
So as far as like the people first portion of it, the big thing is getting a really strong understanding of where people are. Like, where are they right now? What's their understanding of the technology? What is their attitude and perspective towards the technology? So our focus, again, is change management. We're helping organizations adapt to building the business models and team structures and organizational structures that will help them succeed on the other side of this industrial revolution. Because that really is what's happening right now. We're in the midst of another industrial revolution where the shapes of all these things that we've come to take for granted are changing. And that's part of that tension is people know things are changing, but they don't know how they're changing. So the first thing is to start an understanding very clearly, where are your people at? Have they actually spent any time with this technology? Do they know what this technology can and cannot do? The idea of disinformation is very appropriate because it's something we talk about quite a bit. A lot of people have a misaligned understanding of what AI is and what AI is not right now and where it might be going. And I have a lot of empathy for that, because what a lot of people are seeing is when they look at their job and they look at the tasks they have to do, they're seeing certain tasks automated on a regular basis. And every time someone sees something that they do on a regular basis automated, it's an attack on their value. It says you as an individual are less and less valuable to this organization every time something is automated. And what happens is when that changes, but the organization or the team around them isn't adapting to say, we recognize that's been automated. We're actually changing the way we do the work we do. We're changing what you're responsible for and giving you a larger problem set to tackle. That says my world's changing, but nothing around me is changing, which means my runway for having value is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. So we're getting a really good perspective of what people think about their relationship between themselves and AI, themselves and their job, and themselves and the work that they're hopefully going to be doing over the next several years to decades. And that helps us understand what we need to be shaping in terms of how they approach AI, what AI actually will do to their jobs and won't do, but also how their organization and teams have to change as a result of this. So it's not just the tasks that are automating within their jobs, but it's the way that the team is absorbing that and expanding the skill sets and capabilities their team has accessible to them. So they're not just doing what's defined as a job today, they're doing what's going to be defined around that job over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. And that's what people aren't seeing right now. They're seeing what's happening today and yesterday, but they're not getting the clarity of vision and the clarity of direction from their leadership that says, this is what your job will look like in the next 3 to 5 years. Here's how we're going to help you get there. Here's how we're going to shape the team and the work in order to facilitate that for you. And without that, there's no clarity of expectation. And that's what creates fear and uncertainty. So that's really what we're seeing in terms of the strategies we have to adapt to for how we to bring people along and give them that roadmap and that clarity.
It's similar to how we had to bring people along in the virtual movement. I mean, obviously the pandemic accelerated that. But when I think about begging people to understand that virtual training, virtual design was as effective or more effective than face-to-face training, even though I came from face-to-face training, right? it was that change management that we had to work with organizations to understand that the blended approach would allow for a greater result, right? That there's always room for face-to-face training. There's always room for virtual training. There's always, room for say e-learning. So if I compare that to where we are today with AI and think about change management, as you mentioned, and it's all about innovation and how we adapt, right, to the ever-changing technology that's out there, because AI as it is today, Ian, right, will be different tomorrow. And so the whole concept that you mentioned about getting clarity for the future, the goal there is really focusing on what do the people need to be prepared for in the future of their work. And that starts with us as leadership, right? So, both of us share the role of CEO and being able to really position that future of work in a way that helps the employees understand that their job is changing. It is evolving. It's not being replaced. It's just evolving. But I think it starts with leadership.
Karen, that's a great point. The one thing I would want to ask you specifically, what challenges arise with over-reliance on AI and the technology that comes from it in your learning programs? Because there is so much noise out there right now.
I'd say bad technology. I'd say people relying on AI to do the work, the thinking for them, to lay out content or blogs or ebooks. I mean, you're seeing a lot of content being pushed out the door today, and how much of that is all AI driven, I think we can tell based on the words that are being used. So I think one of the challenges is, a snooze fest, right? Creating content and delivering content for our learners that isn't focused on them, but really just focused on here's a problem, here's the solution, and I found it through ChatGPT.
Yeah, and I know you have discussed this at some of your conferences that you've keynoted on, of like how many bad bots will be out there for many years. Can you explain kind of where that's going right now?
Yeah, I mean, we're at a really interesting crossroads. I want to echo what Karen was saying about the over-reliance of technology and essentially focusing on, what the difference is between what is technically possible and what the practical limitations are of the technology. And that's where there's a lot of friction and conflict, because we're seeing the models improve at record-breaking paces. The models are improving 5 to 10 times per year, which means we're on an exponential curve for capability of AI and bots, which is amazing from a technical perspective. That I've never seen technology move that fast, and this is the slowest it's ever going to move into our future. If you look at that one data point, you would assume that we're all going to be working in a world run by robots in the next 3 or 4 years. But we intuitively know that's not going to be the case. And a big part of that is because there's this huge gap between what is technically possible and what we can practically implement and use and work with. And that comes from a bunch of different variables between what can we as humans learn to use effectively? What new skill sets do we need to train on? Learning takes time. Implementation takes even more time. And it's not just an element of education, it's an element of social dynamics, of politics, of enterprise values. All these things are really important in deciding what you're going to implement, how you're going to shape your culture, and how you're going to utilize these tools. It's not just, okay, our tool set got an upgrade, now all of you have these skill sets. You may have access to these skill sets, but do you even know they were there? Do you even know how to use them? And if you are using AI to create all this content, are you looking at the future through the lenses of the past, which is the mode most people are stuck in? Karen, you talked about all this stuff coming out that is, blogs and ebooks and content built with AI. We can all tell. And that is that's stage one of the societal adoption of technology. We do everything we used to do with the new tool set and just, oh, cool, it's easier now. But what we're realizing, A, it sounds like garbage half the time. And B, the real power in AI doesn't come from just doing the exact same things we used to do in the exact same way, just powered by AI now. That lasts for a very short period of time where there's any advantage at that at all. And what that does is it creates what I call the rise of mediocrity. And over time, like when we get these new technologies, things actually get worse before they get better,
Right.
which is counterintuitive to most people because they think, oh, we have new technology, can do new things in better ways. It can when used appropriately in the appropriate context. Those are two things that are not intuitive, that most people don't know how to do right away. So we make the mistakes and we bruise our knees on these things by saying, okay, we're going to use it in the way we used to do everything else. People are treating ChatGPT like it's Google. That's not how this works. We're unlearning 25 years of digital behaviors. Unlearning takes time. It takes deep work. It's hard. It's not easy. And when you hear everyone say, oh, AI is easy, this is so easy, you can make $25 million selling AI designs on Etsy tomorrow for no effort. Like, okay, everybody knows that's BS. And we start to associate the technology with the BS instead of the actual BSers who are the one driving the narrative. And that's part of that battle we're all fighting right now, especially as someone in the AI space, it being taken with credibility and seeing what is possible goes so much farther beyond than, can I just apply this to the things I'm doing now in the same way? And when people start to look at things differently, that's when they see the possibility. But they also see the long road ahead in terms of being able to use this effectively and what that means for our jobs.
Ian, everything that you just said brings me back to something that Jennifer Hoffman actually coined many years ago, which is mindsets, tool sets, and skill sets. And at the time, it was all focused on virtual learning. And if I think about this, it's really tool sets, mindsets, skill sets, right? Because all these tools are coming out at a rapid pace, like you mentioned. Now, all these bad things are going to be out there, and people are going to jump on the bandwagon and do some really bad things. And we have to make sure that we are helping shape the mindsets of the people that are using it, for the fear factors that are out there, for the poor users, right? The BS users, as you mentioned. And then really identify within the organizations what skills are needed, what upskilling do we need to do, what reskilling do we need to do in order to make sure that we're moving into the future. So it just kind of got me thinking, Jeff, I think we're going to need to take a look at our content from years ago, mindsets, tool sets, and skill sets, and kind of revamp it based on what's happening in the technological world today.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And I mean, one thing that I would want to hear approach this, and also Karen, I'd love you to pipe in a little bit, is what kind of strategies, Ian, what kind of strategies would you recommend for balancing the technology advancements and the need to maintain a human approach, a human-centric approach? Because, like you were saying before, like, we have bad bots that are writing bad novels, and people are constantly thinking they're going to get rich off of that. There's got to be a balance. There's got to be an equilibrium that comes out of this.
Absolutely. It comes down to the old adage, which is not going away anytime soon: garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
If you are expecting the tools to just do the work for you, you're going to get garbage. And they do require time spent with the tools. I would say that unless you've spent a minimum of 10 hours working with these tools, you don't really know what they do. And the more time you spend with them, the more advanced you become in terms of understanding what they can and cannot do. There's a term called the jagged frontier within AI. And I forgot who coined it first, otherwise I'd cite them. But the idea that a lot of people will assume because AI is good at one thing, and there's something very similar to it, that you can make the linear connection, it would also be good at that one thing. And what we're finding is that is not the case at all. There are often times when AI is really good at one thing and then not good at this related thing that is very, very similar. And because of that, it is more imperative today that you spend the time working with the tool, understanding what it's good at and understanding what it's not good at. And internally at Signal and Cipher, we have a phrase that goes, from volume comes virtue. And most people look at volume and creating volume as a way of creating things that are disposable and worthless. We actually reframe that and say the more reps you get in, it's like working out, the more reps you get in, the more you understand how to do the exercise effectively. You build that training into your body. And with tools, it's the same thing. You ingrain the training and that tool set into your mental framework, into how you start to solve problems, how you start to think of that tool set as part of the equation on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Because if you're having to spend a lot of your mental energy thinking about, how could ChatGPT do this? Or how could Claude do this? And you're just like battling back and forth, you're not going to use the tool. But if you've used it 400, 500 times, and you have an idea how it can help you with certain portions of the task, the other portions of that task become easier to navigate. You start to understand what portions of the task it will help you with, very clearly what portions of the task it won't help you with. And that becomes more a part of the mental math of how you approach each challenge as it comes up. Internally, we tend to have an AI first lens of how we try and solve each problem, not because we think the tools are better at solving these things, but it gives us opportunity to wade into uncharted waters and start to get the map drawn of what that territory looks like. And that's a big part of our jobs going into the future, is to be in, we call it cartography mode. You're going into uncharted waters. You're going into new frontier landscapes people have not been before, working on things you might be familiar with, but in new ways. And unless we all take that mentality, we're not going to learn how these tools incorporate into our lives individually within our role, but even more so with more complexity, how does it interact with the way we work as a team, as an organization? What can we rely upon for understanding how it shapes our organizations? So those are the things that we're really focused on. Like, how do we take that mindset shift and say, you know what, these last 3 times, the tool spat out garbage for you. Well, that wasn't a loss. That was a test and a hypothesis that you were proposing. And that's really how we have to look at our work now, is a series of tests and hypotheses, because these tools are not slowing down. And they are going to get better in unexpected ways. And you're not going to discover that unless you're constantly looking at the training and the news, unless you're doing the work inside the tools.
It speaks so much to take a look at the data, right? The tool is only as good as the human behind it. The data is only as good as whoever human is out there to utilize that data. Something you mentioned hit me so strong when you said an individual, we've got all these people out there claiming to be experts on AI, but if you haven't spent more than, or I think you said, if you haven't spent more than 10 hours in that specific tool, you can't even imagine how to actually utilize it or implement it. And that flipped into my head thinking about, thought leadership. How much time do we spend researching and becoming a thought leader in an area that we're passionate about? Yeah, we all might be really interested and intrigued by AI or other technologies, but if we're not spending the time researching and testing and retesting and failing, we're not learning, right? We're not ever going to get beyond the copy and paste, point and click, right? We have to be able to go beyond that and allow ourselves as humans to use that tool and feed it.
Couldn't agree more.
Cool.
Fantastic point, Karen. One thing that I would love to hear from Ian, do you have any examples of like successful programs that you've implemented that, use the AI technology, but also keep in the human-centered design aspect of it?
Absolutely. And I'll jump off of Karen's last point about the tools only being as good as the humans using them. And that goes both ways for the technology, but also the understanding of the business. And what we're seeing right now is a transition for those who are really embracing the tools. They're already transitioning away from individual use of technology to collaborative use of AI technology. And that's something that's not really intuitive at the moment because it's not built into all the tools. So most people have been exposed to ChatGPT or Claude as a way to prompt a direct large language model. That's one form of AI usage. AI has been around actually since 1955. So it's been around for a long time as far as a coined word.
Right.
And we've seen multiple iterations of it. So you have predictive AI, generative AI, machine learning, which is what most people actually are confusing with AI. But I'll stick in the realm of generative AI for now. And that's what most people know as ChatGPT and other tools like it. And we're still in this stage where most people are just using it to do work individually. So that could be writing those blogs or those books, helping you rewrite a phrase for an email, generating imagery or music. And most people go to a large language model and ask it for a specific output. Then they'll take that output and they'll put it in whatever documentation or whatever item they're working on that time. It's usually for these very micro specific tasks and outputs and inputs that are collected to create a greater whole. And where we're moving towards is a more collective and collaborative approach to using and interacting with AI. So AI actually as both a colleague and a coworker. So that's a part of the space that we're moving into. And then the other part is having a more comprehensive collaborative experience with AI. So helping to create more complex works versus just an email or just an article with other people in the loop. And that is where the tool sets are going in terms of what we're seeing from the Googles, the Anthropics of the world, but also the custom enterprise tooling that's being developed and that we've developed internally. And to give you an example, we worked with Boston Consulting Group last year to re-engineer a business process. And that's a big part of change management is once you understand where your people are and where your company is going, how do you start to look at the process and how you create value within your organization? So what's a key value driving activity within your organization? What is it that you use and do to make money? What is it that you do to drive things forward? And looking at your people is one part, but also then looking at the work that they do. So what kind of processes do you do on a regular basis that can be impacted or enhanced by AI? And then we'll take a look at that through first principles and design thinking and say, how could we re-engineer this from scratch if we were to build it today? By acknowledging and understanding all the drawbacks of this particular process. So let's take the brainstorm or the design sprint as an example. That's what we re-engineered with BCG. Mm-hmm. And we went and we did research on why do most brainstorms fail? Why do they fail to produce real tangible progress? And there were 6 core reasons. One of them we aligned too early on things. We let human bias dictate versus data. We're not coming up with enough ideas. Research shows that it takes 2,000 to 10,000 novel ideas to come up with something that's commercially viable when the average brainstorm stops at 25. You're not even scratching the surface. You just, literally what you've done is you've gotten tribal knowledge on the table, all this stuff that's obvious and ingrained in your organization, and that's what you're circling. And then we align on that. We're really narrowing our field of opportunity. When in the area of commercial viability, you have to force yourself outside of that lens. That's something people don't do very well because our biases get in the way. So of these things, we start to look at and say, how can we short circuit these issues, get rid of them, whether they're AI based or not, doesn't matter, but getting rid of those issues. Another issue is not having leadership support because brainstorms take time. CEOs don't have time to go participate in these things. But what if we could change all that? What if we could build a system that takes care of those ideas and makes it a better source? And then how can we enable it by AI? As Karen mentioned earlier, AI is not always the answer. It's a tool, it's a platform, it's a foundational infrastructure for how you can build on top of it. Not the tool is the answer. So then we figure out how it can be an enabler for all these things. And ultimately what happened is we created a process where multiple people could collaborate on really complex ideation and brainstorm, where we essentially visualized hundreds of different ideas rather than using sticky notes, which keep the construct very abstract. Like we've all had those brainstorms where we take the picture with our cell phone, we email it to everybody and say, here are the 10 ideas we came up with in a bunch of bullet points on your email. And the people who weren't there were like, how am I supposed to relate to this? I don't know how you got there, what you used to decide on those ideas. It's still abstract, so I don't even know what it means. And then you have to come back weeks later, rebrief everybody, and maybe start to get yourself moving forward. And by re-engineering all of this, so you can have the right people in the room, so you can visualize and see these ideas come to life in front of you and have deeper conversations about every single one of them, we went from 25 ideas to several hundred ideas, all visualized, all relatable to whether you were in the room or whether you were not, a story that connects all of them and a way to explain these ideas and even build prototypes around the ideas that were scientifically validated in the session by using AI to pull scientific research and papers around some of these hypotheses and say, yes, this is true. No, this is not. That's just a hunch. We were wrong about this one. We were right about this one. And by being able to essentially what we call collapse time and take a bunch of things that would happen days or weeks later, bringing them into the same task that you're doing right now is its distinct advantage of AI. So you can start to do 3 to 6 weeks worth of work in a single day or session. Now, that could sound scary to people. Like, well, if I'm doing 6 weeks worth of work, then where's my value? It's not about doing more with less faster. It's about changing the scope of the challenge that you're pursuing. I like to look at the industrial evolution of the last 150 years, especially going from like coal to steam power to electric as an example of this. So let's take a look at the steam shovel. I mean, the way that we built the cities that many of us live in today came from the Industrial Revolution, moved to electric power. We had these devices that literally had the strength of 10,000 men moving Earth. Now, we didn't just say, okay, we're going to build the same number of houses and buildings that we were going to last time with no changes in quality or type or quantity of any kind. And when we're done, we're going to send everybody home and construction workers will be laid off forever in perpetuity because we're done.
Yeah.
Like it didn't work that way. We created new industries to support these things. We came up with new technologies that enabled things like skyscrapers, which are what shape the urban landscape today. We came up with new technologies to help bring people together through transportation. The car created all sorts of urban sprawl, which created new industries. The ski industry wouldn't even be around today without the automobile. Making direct connections between these things is not as easy as we make it seem when we have these prognostications of a future run by robots. Mm-hmm. So there's a long and winded way of saying most people are looking at these as ways to automate specific tasks that then come for your specific job. But what we're really doing is we're taking things that we do today and we're making the scope of the challenge that we can solve as a team, as an individual, as a company, so much bigger than it's ever been before. So the upside that we can capture as an individual, as a team, as a company, skyrockets. But if all you're focused on as a leader is how many FTEs and people can I replace with this technology, your company's already lost because you're focusing on the future through the lens of the past, through the lens of efficiency and effectiveness. That is not a people-centric way to lead. Mm-hmm. And the people-centric way to lead is going to win because it takes into account who we're serving with our products. It's not the machines. We're not building our companies from machines. We're building them from people. But if we build our company as a machine for people, that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So really focusing on how do we change the scope of the problems that our people are empowered to tackle, we're all going to have a much bigger tool set for much bigger value that we can capture as individuals and teams in the long run.
I want to hit on a couple things, Jeff. Ian, what I heard, bigger, faster. Why work harder when you can work smarter? And respect the people. The example you gave with the brainstorming example in corporate ed or corporate America, I completely can see it. I can see all the sticky notes. I can see the regurgitating of all of the ideas, right? When the 20 individuals are sitting at the round table, they're constantly just saying the same things. But if we can utilize a tool to go from 25 to 4,000 ideas, we've just broke through brick and mortar, right? We've broken through this idea of it's more than just us, because that's all we can do around that round table. But if we can take that and then put that in, I'm going to put it at the practitioner level. If we can take that into a classroom and we can respect the learner and we can say we're utilizing this tool and we're going to have this collaborative experience, we're doing the same thing. We're taking what could have been 5-hour training, snooze fest, and turning it into a 2-hour training, which allows the learners to really feel respected, to be accessible within that program, allows us as humans to facilitate the knowledge in the room. We've got content, they've got knowledge. We need to put it together so that we actually leave that training session making an impact, a change right there with that practitioner back on the job. Because I talk about this all the time, Ian. It starts with like the leader, right? The leader's like, oh, we want, and I give this example because my father was in manufacturing. We want to increase our piston production by 20%. Big overarching goal. Great. How are you going to get there? If you never get to the people actually making the pistons on the floor and creating that strategy and finding the right tool to make them faster, more efficient, more effective, we're never going to reach that goal. So I think the moral to the story, and I'm so thankful that you came on today, Ian, is that we just have to look at the technologies that are coming, adapt to those technologies, figure out how to implement those technologies, get rid of the fear factor, and go back to the basics. How do we manage our own mind, right, to figure out how does this enhance who I am as a human? How does this enhance the future of my workforce within what I have control of and what I don't have control of? And what do I need to do to upskill or reskill my team, myself, to continue to learn? Because isn't that what it's all about? Continuous learning overall, no matter what tool's thrown at us.
Couldn't agree more.
And I think that's a perfect way to end it. So I want to thank Karen. I want to thank Ian. Ian, it is so fantastic to have your expertise and knowledge of how the future is going to be built and how we're going to take advantage of it as humans, not as machines. So I want to thank you guys both. If you guys like the content that we have, please hit that like and share button down below. If you're seeing us on YouTube, hit the notification button, please. That helps us with our algorithm, again, machine learning. And we'd love to see you next week. So take care, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks all. Thank you for tuning into Modern Learning on the Air. For all your training and services needs, visit us at insynctraining.com. And don't forget to sign up for our monthly webinars, where we cover key topics and trends in the learning and development space. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing.